I get a drop? Thanks.
Can I get a thanks?
Ready.
Satchel out.
Revealing area.
Satchel out.
Spike down A.
Spike spotted A.
You will not kill my allies!
Enemy spotted A.
Sets wide.
Enemy spotted A.
The hunt begins.
Reloading.
Somebody out.
Revealing area.
One enemy remaining. Spike down A.
Enemy spotted A.
Team A.
Reloading.
The pack survives.
Last round before the switch.
We cannot keep our goods after this.
Spend all.
Can I get a drop? Thanks. Can I get a drop? Let's fly. Thanks.
Scanning ahead. Shock dart.
Enemy spotted A.
Blinding.
Revealing area.
Clearing out.
Spike planted.
Flash out.
One enemy remaining.
Enemy spotted A.
Switching
I hate
sides.
to say it, but probably best
To play as a team. So, what's the plan?
Today, I'm going to share with you 3 progressively more disturbing stories, and at the end of each of them, I'm going to share with you the video that is famously associated with them. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel, because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer the like button a ride home from soccer practice, but then don't show up. Also, please subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. On April 9th, 2015, residents of the tiny farming community of Fairdale, Illinois, woke up to heavy rains outside and an ominous forecast. Severe thunderstorms were going to persist all day, and then at night, there was a chance of a tornado. Meteorologists were telling residents of Fairdale that if you can, you should evacuate because it's not worth sticking around for. But if you're going to ride out the storm, make sure you've taken the necessary precautions and make sure you have a plan for how to get to a shelter if the storm gets really bad. That morning, some forecasters were saying this tornado could prove to be one of the biggest in Illinois' history. But most of the 152 Fairdale residents had lived here their whole lives, and they'd seen bad storms before, even tornadoes, and they had ridden them out before. How could this one be any different? You know, most of the time, the worst that happened was maybe a power line comes down and you lose power for the day. But unlike previous storms, this one was getting worse and worse by the minute. And by 6 p.m. that night, forecasters were no longer theorizing that this could be a huge tornado. They were outright pleading with Fairdale residents to evacuate while you still can. But despite these warnings, the vast majority of Fairdale residents stayed put. They were committed to riding the storm out. By 7 p.m., meteorologists were saying this tornado is imminent and it looks as big or bigger than the last major tornado that came through Illinois that killed 8 people and leveled an entire town. This tornado tonight is going to kill people. Just 15 minutes later at 7:15, the tornado finally touched down right outside Fairdale. It was this massive, almost mile-wide tornado with over 200-mile-an-hour winds. And unlike other tornadoes of that size that typically move at about 30 miles an hour, this one was traveling on land at about 15 miles an hour, meaning it would be sitting over the areas it was devastating for longer amounts of time, making it even worse than some of the worst predictions that meteorologists had for this tornado. 15 minutes later at 7:30 p.m., 84-year-old Fairdale resident Clem Schultz and his wife Jerry Schultz, they were at home because they had decided to ride out the storm. As Clem is sitting in the living room watching the Weather Channel, kind of waiting for the last possible second to go into their basement, he hears his wife yell out from the kitchen to come in here and look at this. So Clem goes into the kitchen and she's pointing out the back window, and he looks out and he sees this massive tornado coming right at them. It's less than a mile away and it is way bigger than he thought it was going to be. But from their perspective, because the tornado was spinning counterclockwise, it kind of looked like it was spinning away from town into this empty field. And Clem says to his wife Jerry, you know what, it looks like it's going to miss us, but we're probably going to lose power, so I'm going to go up into the attic and get some lanterns ready. So Jerry stays in the kitchen, Clem goes up into the attic, and as he's fishing to get out the lanterns, he hears what sounds like a freight train barreling through town, and he had this little window at the edge of his attic, so he goes over and he looks out, and the tornado had not veered off into the open field. It had continued straight towards his house, and it was ripping off roofs right in front of him. And he figured, I don't have enough time to go down into the basement. I have no time to do anything. So he takes out his phone and he begins recording.
Flash out!
Clem's house, along with all the others in that video, collapsed. And initially, Clem thought he had died because it went totally quiet and it was totally dark. And he actually said out loud, "Am I dead?" But it was the pain in his back from a crushed vertebrae that told him, no, you survived. And he begins to kind of pull himself out of the rubble, and before long, a neighbor is pulling him out. And as soon as he's out of the rubble of his house, he looks around, and his whole community is pretty much gone. And as he's standing there kind of bewildered, his neighbor says, "Clem, don't look down." And Clem says, "Why?" And his neighbor says, "Because your wife is under you and she's dead." When the dust had finally settled, not only had Clem's wife been killed, but Clem's neighbor had been killed as well, because the tornado went directly through their two houses. That video that Clem shot is now used to educate people on how dangerous tornadoes really are, and how anytime a tornado is coming through your area, never go outside to film it, seek shelter. On Sunday, February 12th, 2017, Abigail Williams was over her best friend, Liberty German's house for a sleepover. Abby and Libby were 13 and 14, respectively. That night, as they're laying in bed, they were looking out the window, hoping they saw snowflakes come down, because there was apparently this huge storm that was going to roll through the next
Last
day.
player
And they
standing.
were hoping that if it did, school would be canceled the next day. But when they woke up the next morning, it hadn't even snowed. However, they found out that in Delphi, Indiana, where they lived, school had been canceled preemptively in anticipation of this big storm that never really amounted to anything. So the girls got a free day off where they could actually go outside and enjoy it. So the girls start talking about how they're going to spend their extra day off. And Libby suggests, well, why don't we go check out the Monon High Bridge? It was this abandoned bridge that crossed over the stream, and a lot of their classmates would take pictures on it and post it to their social media, and the girls figured this is a great day to go do that. So Libby asks her grandmother, Becky, who was her
We are
primary
strong
caretaker,